matter?
Yes. This is city map.
Oh, yeah.
You ready?
Yes, sir.
But they voted it down.
Okay, I'd like to, call this P and Z meeting to order. This is our business meeting. If you would, please stand with me for a word of prayer. Our Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for life, health, and strength. Our Father, we ask you to come and be with us as we try to make decisions that will impact this county. Our Father, we ask your blessings upon each and every one under the sound of our voice, as well as everyone in this entire world. And our Father, we'll be so careful to give you all the praise and glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. First of all, let me say welcome to everybody that is attending. This is our business meeting. For those of you that are not familiar with the way it operates, this is our business meeting. This is a meeting where we get to hear what's coming up at our public hearing. This is not a public hearing, but we do invite all citizens to come and to be a part and to listen and see what we do. So just so you understand, this is not a public hearing, this is a business meeting that we hear what's coming up. First of all, I need to give you a report on what happened from last month at the commissioners' meeting held last night. I think Lee was there, I don't think any of the rest of you were there, but I'll just kind of go over them one by one. Stacy and Tommy Wilson, we had approved the rezone 5-0. The commissioners also approved the rezone of 5-0 with our conditions intact. Mark Whitfield up on Commerce Niche Road came in and actually just withdrew his request. Just withdrew his request for a rezone, and that was accepted, and he just went on off and
And he never spoke with me about it or anything.
nothing. He just got up and said, "I withdraw." So that was the end of that one. Jay and Hunter Pritchens, we had approved the rezone with conditions for 11 1.5 acre lots. His rezone request was approved with an condition added to it that he could not use over 5, I believe it was 5 lots. So it went from 11 to 5. And that was approved by the commissioners from 5-0. The other one was Madison Preserve subdivision, and this was very long, very drawn out, lots of questions asked. But from a P&Z standpoint, I think we did what we were supposed to do and went through all of the conditions. And as far as we were concerned, they met our conditions. But when it got to the commissioner's desk, they had a lot of other questions about the roads, about if the lots, they could have that many lots in there, if the setbacks were all met the requirements. So that particular preliminary plat was delayed. So that they got some other stuff to work out. So that won't be coming back to the Board of Commissioners. So with that, that's about what's going on last night. If there's any questions.
Just have a follow-up on that action the commissioners took. Are there any deliverables, or is it coming back to us? Are we supposed to take something on and find out more information for them or anything?
To my knowledge, the commissioners did not refer it back to us. I think they're gonna handle it from this point on. We've made our recommendation, and they're gonna handle it from this point on. Now, that's not to say they can't go back later and determine that it needs to come back to us for, further investigation, but to my knowledge, at this point, it's gonna be handled by the commissioners and the planning and zoning offices from this point on.
And did they give the applicant any specific instructions on what they needed to do?
Oh, yes,
Next step?
lots of them,
Okay.
lots of them,
I'm sorry, I missed it.
lots of them.
There were some legal issues that the county attorney has to work on with the commissioners, such as the road, that this was final platted. The roads were already turned over to the county as county roads, but now they're not in condition to be, legitimate roads and have to be worked on, and, you know, do they, do they meet the code or the regulations for roads? So
In other words, we weren't privileged to all that information. We did what we were supposed to do, as far as we could go. So,
Thank you, sir.
Is it Pruitt? Who was the builder?
Bridget,
Pridget. On his, is there a reason? Was it the water they went to fire, or the wells?
I cannot give you an answer to that. The only thing I know is that they decided that because of,
You have to ask me, I can't.
that because of the, there was one person that spoke, same person that spoke here
Oh,
from the other subdivision, that wanted the lots bigger because of certain things, and the commissioners decided, well, they wanted to change what we had recommended and limit them to 5 lots. Now, I'm gonna keep my opinion out of that, so we're going from there.
Does that,
Terry knows my opinion, I told him last night my opinion, so that had nothing to do with anything.
does that mean that the plat is changed then?
All of it has to change.
Now, does that one come back to us?
It should.
It was a rezone, not the preliminary plat.
No.
So it was
Yeah,
just a
no, no, no,
rezone
talking
that
about-
kinda got.
Talking about
Pridgeon?
Pridgeon.
Pridgeon was just a rezone, not a preliminary plat.
Right.
So if he decides to move forward with a preliminary plat, then we'll see it again.
Okay, gotcha.
But
But other than that, you won't see it anymore,
so can we add?
because it was approved,
Yeah,
but there was a condition added to it.
exactly.
And then, just so you know, the BOC tabled it instead of remanding it like it came back last time for the preserve.
Madison Preserve.
Preserve,
Mhm.
it was tabled, not remanded. So there's a difference in
Okay.
there. Verbiage.
Words are important, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Can I ask, was there a reason given at the time of the,
You're welcome to ask Terry, since he's here,
was there a?
if he
reason?
wants to expand on it.
No, I mean, well, at the meeting, did they give a reason, or they just?
Yeah.
Oh, well,
It's just because if you looked at all the adjacent properties, everything that was around there was A2, which meant it could be a 5-acre minimum only. We did not feel like that it was realistic to say that he just could not get an R1. So he gets all the R1 rules, but the parcels just have to be larger to make them more like everything that's surrounding it. Everything that's surrounding it is A2.
oh.
Now, he may or may not like it, and he may come back and request different, he could sue us for that, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions or comments about what went on last night? Okay, getting into the, this week's agenda. Tracy, can you tell us what we got coming forward?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, what we do need to vote on the minutes, with the March minutes, if that's okay.
Okay, everybody has received the March minutes, I think, by email, whatever. At this time, we will entertain a motion to approve or deny the minutes.
I move the minutes be accepted as published.
I'll second it.
Been moved and properly second that the minutes be approved for March 1st and March 15th, if I'm correct.
Yes, sir.
Any questions? We're ready to vote. This will start with you.
Yes.
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 Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
minutes have been approved. Okay,
Okay, as you know, we've got 10 rezones this month, 3 of which have nothing to do with the A1s going to A2. So I put those first.
okay.
The first one is Brenda Escovedo, and she pronounces the B with the V, Escovedo. And she is requesting to rezone her 5.9 acre property from A2 to RR to allow her to cut out 2 acres to sell to a family member to live on. The property is located at, and I have to put a 0 when there's not an address sign. Usually if there's no home, it's just listed as 0. So it's located at 0 Nice Commerce Road on map 15, parcel 143, A03 in District 1. What's going on here is, Ms. Escobedo, she has a parcel of land that she and her husband live on. And this parcel behind her, there's nothing on it, and it's just a 5.9 acre, and it's zoned A2, and she's wanting to, it's actually her brother-in-law would like to move his family onto that, and that's why they're requesting that rezone.
You won't know where exactly at it, cause I seen the sign when I come this way. It's right there, you come off of Nowhere Road. Nowhere Road runs into Nice Commerce Road, right there in that curve. It's right there in the curve.
Yes,
Before
sir.
you get on, come back on the Nowhere Road, that's where.
That's good to know. This is not an address.
Yeah, and she lives at, and I think I indicated it on the application, it's behind 5883. I apologize, I didn't see that name, but up there with the name of the nearest road. So her property that she lives on is 5883, and it's right behind there. I have had all the signs verified by our building inspectors, so all of these signs are up.
Okay,
And, so that takes care of the first one.
any particular questions for Tracy on that first one?
I have one.
Yes,
I
sir.
don't know that this was mentioned when she came in to apply for this, but I know that we handled 2 of these last night, combining properties.
Mhm.
And this is one of those, she actually lives on this notched out.
Yes, sir.
So do you know if she would be willing to, since she's gonna keep this one, of combining it with this to get it above 5 acres to make that stay A2? We just have to ask her.
Yes, sir, that wasn't,
Well, that's something we
discussed
can,
at
we
that
can address
time.
at in the public hearing.
Okay.
Okay.
And
Any
then,
other questions on this particular one? Okay, the next one?
okay, this is for Stephen and Candace Bradley. They are requesting to rezone their 15.94 acre property from A1 to A2 to combine 0.82 acres from adjoining A2 property for a suitable building site to build a home for Mr. Bradley's disabled brother who is blind and needs to be close to someone in the family. The property, even though it's 15.94 acres, it is unsuitable for soil for perking in the septic tank. Actually, the house that's on there now has a very complicated system for the septic tank. It's having to have pumps because he's just in a floodplain area toward the back of the swamp. And so he is just needing that little bit of property from the next door to actually build that home on and put a septic tank on. And that property is located at 1025 Lim Edwards Road on map 47, parcel 73 in District 3.
So does the large parcel, the 15.94 acres, already have a residence on it?
Yes, sir.
So they're wanting to take this .82, combine it with the 15.91,
Yes, sir.
and put another house on it?
Yes, and it
Two
can,
houses on the same lot?
you can, it's under accessory dwelling unit.
Okay,
And,
and that's his
and
question.
you can have, he has enough acreage to do the second home.
Okay, is this 80.82 acres, is it suitable for septic, or they gonna have to go from?
It is, they've had that tested.
That's the reason they need to absorb it, so that they will have the appropriate leach field.
82 acres, 82.
And that's gonna leave the parent parcel there at 5 acres as well for the
Correct.
A2 also then, correct? If they're
Yes,
taking
sir.
that .82 out of.
Mm-hmm,
Okay.
it is.
So I was seeing that they said no easement is needed, the private drive, so they're gonna,
Because it'd be an accessory dwelling unit, part of the parent home,
oh,
not like that entirely. It's two houses, but it's not at the same time, but the way it's looked at through zoning as an accessory dwelling unit.
even though it's separated.
So they will be using, the two residents will be using the same driveway, so we'll have a private drive situation?
Yes. And there is an existing one there, and it only goes to his house.
It already goes to the house that they wanna build. Oh, okay.
Correct.
Do you know how many other people share that private drive?
Just one, just him, the Stephen Kenny Bradley.
Okay.
So there'll be two once this other house is built.
Correct, yes, sir.
And just so y'all kind of be aware of this, we're going to see a ton of these coming up. Several of the local counties around us have already put things into play where they're talking about the number of feet on the road that's required to be able to subdivide. Size of properties are really being as far as initial construction, and then how the accessory dwelling can be done. Airbnbs and all the short-term rental and those type things. And this isn't in reference to this specific one here, obviously this is a needs-based, but everybody's looking for a way to increase the density of housing onto existing properties. We will continue, much like we're seeing with private drives and those type of things, trying to subdivide and go from A2 to RR. I'm working in Walton County right now, and I mean, seeing a ton of these type things where, you know, not saying that it's not above board by any stretch of the imagination, but once again, it's a way to be able to increase the number of people living on property.
Tracy, help me understand, the one that's out in Edwards, there's a house I see on this one,
Yes, sir.
and the property behind it
Mhm.
is where they're taking that little acres from.
Yes, ma'am, let me just get that.
Yeah.
down
Cause I
in front
think
of me.
when you show it on this one,
I think I included it on the drawing,
in the area.
yes, ma'am, on the proposed plat that I inserted, it's just that little corner that's noted in red there, and then that's his home.
Yeah, but I'm saying on here, the area, is that showing me where it's coming from?
That's all that is.
The one that's drawn in, the one that's drawn in.
On the
blue,
back
that's what
page,
it's talking about.
in the yellow,
Oh, okay.
there's a little strip that comes out to Lamb Edwards Road.
Right,
It's a
so
little,
they're to the back of that parcel.
Oh, okay, I didn't see this one.
If you pull these up on the computer, go to Q Public,
Yeah,
Madison County, you can search it by the owner's name, you can search it by the parcel number. It really kind of make it, I mean, you can really, you can count how many cows they got when the picture was taken. I mean, you can really get some pretty granular detail before you ride out there by utilizing that on the front side and really see where, depending upon the time of year, this looks like this was done in the summertime because the trees are all green, but, you know, at different times, whenever it was done, you can really get a lot of detail about a drive, you know, or how many people are utilizing it and those type things. When you go to qpublic.net,
yeah,
that's a nice tool to be able to have to use.
But I'm-
If you look at the time stamp for the
Talking,
photos, some of these are
Yes.
going back to 2019.
Yeah.
Are they really?
Start from that now to that.
Yeah, see,
They're
there's
kind of,
road
you
out
know,
there.
they're kind of not updated but once a year from the key public side.
Is that something
Yeah.
that we upload?
That's two different properties.
Robin
They
said
own
that
that
they
property.
don't, they just send in the information and the key public.
On the yellow street right here, that's where the drive can go.
Really?
Okay,
So
is
this
there any other comments on this one?
Swing by
Before
my
the-
office, I'll show you how to do those.
Get ready for the public hearing. Any other questions for Tracy? Okay. Next one?
All right, the third one is for Jimmy and Judy Bates, and they are requesting to rezone a portion, which is 0.69 acres, of their 13.54 acre property from A2 to RR to combine with adjoining RR property to give as a courtesy buffer to their neighbor. The property is located at 854 Jack Sharp Road on map 46, parcel 178 in District 5. Now, this one's a little bit, complicated, I guess you could say.
Yes.
But Mr. Curtis Daniel is the one that is, representing this, I have the authorization from the property owners. But he said that this gentleman would like to give him 0.69 acres of his land, just as a courtesy buffer. And actually, I have a plat that was previously approved, by Miss Linda. She had approved a plat for 0.31 acres to be combined with this property without a rezone, and just called it, retracement lines, but I felt like I couldn't do that because it's not retracement lines. So this gentleman has had actually 0.31 acres and plus this 0.69, and his goal was 1 acre from this gentleman. So that just gives you a little background knowledge of it.
So all we rezoning is that 0.69 or the whole tract?
Yes, just that portion, 0.69.
So where did that 0.69 be same as the one right next to it, you give it to 2.13? It's already zoned RR, right?
Yes, sir, it is.
I think you answered my question, but I just want to make absolutely sure. As a matter of fact, I was out there yesterday and actually spoke to Mr. Daniel, and he was out weed eating the home next to him, the lady that lives there. And he pointed out the house that Jimmy and Judy Bates lived in, that he just says it was just a real nice thing. It's a nice area out there and a nice setup that they've got, but does this mean, he's just deeding them this over to him by this document? What's the legal, it's.
And you know, the plat is not ownership, only deeds, and I have not seen a deed on this. I guess he's wanting to make sure it will go through before a deed's made. You know, we didn't get into that part of it. But yes, I just we had to come up with a phrase to even word that, Christopher and I, and we just thought courtesy buffer would be
Courtesy
about the
buffer.
only thing we could, coin it as.
Can we talk hypotheticals here? Hypothetically, could we put a condition that it has to be deeded over before? This just seems, please go ahead, sir.
They had 1 year to bring it to the rezone,
Mhm.
or it falls back. So even though he gives him the property,
Mhm.
unless they had it platted out or signed a deed,
Uh-huh.
it revert back.
Okay.
So it has to meet our approval within 1 year.
And according to what I've learned from the attorney when we had that little session, that we can put any type of conditions on rezones if we think it's applicable to that particular rezone to make sure it's legal.
So,
But please go ahead.
so piggybacking off him, so the one that they did in June,
Of last year.
yeah, so is that even, did they even own that property? I mean, well, since it didn't come through, is that even part of their property now?
It is, because on the proposed plat that I put in you guys' package, this 2.13 acres actually includes that little piece. Cause he had originally had, let's see, yeah, just a little under 2 acres, and then with that, 0.3, I'm sorry, 0.31. So that is the total acreage for that 2.13, what he already had, and then that added. But see, the surveyor approached me, Mr. Tommy Paul, and he brought in this plat, and he said he had already drawn it up, and he had listed it as a recombination plat. And I said, Tommy, you know, they're two different zones, and he said, well, I know, he said, but it had previously been approved without having to be rezoned. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't approve that. You know, it needs to be the same zone. So we did have that factor in it. So I'm just trying to make it what it needs to be now.
But so, what I'm saying is when they legally go and try to sell this property, because this was not deeded, is it,
But it's a recorded plat.
Right.
You got
so
the,
it just, okay.
we're gonna run across a few of these, just so the board knows where current, I need to be quiet. Current staff is catching on to where prior staff took liberties that they should not have. And Ms. Tracy and myself have a higher moral standing than that, I'd like to say, and that's the reason why this is coming to a rezone. And in the past, a liberty was taken that should not have been taken in our office, and that's at an end.
So this was brought in as a request for a rezone, or you all initiated?
The plat was brought in to be approved, and
Okay, the plat was brought in.
yes, sir,
So that initiated the rezone?
absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Kinda under the same guise that it had been done the previous time, I
Right.
guess.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mhm.
And
Alright.
so as it stands right now, that parcel is 2.13 acres.
Yes, sir.
Alright, and so this is just going to require that 0.31.
That's the old one, the new one,
Right.
6.9.
Yeah, new
Or
one.
point, sorry, 0.69.
Yeah,
That one slipped under the radar, the best way to say it,
yeah.
Prior to-
0.31
Gotcha.
to-
current.
Okay.
So can we just combine, put it all together? No, we can't,
I
okay,
do the rezone.
Yeah,
all right.
because they're
This
two
is by
different
the,
zones.
by the book, no liberties being taken, staff not overstepping their bounds.
No, I mean,
This is
not
what
stepping over your bounds, but I
Yeah.
mean, because that was just,
It shouldn't have been done.
yeah, it shouldn't have been done, you can't, right now, we do it as a, no,
Too late. Too late, it's been recorded, we're making everything from
Not-
February 4th, not throw out any particular date forward. It's by the book.
I hear you saying that this is for buffer, for an additional buffer.
Yes, sir.
Do you, knowing that Linda had already done one buffer, now we're
Mhm.
doing another buffer, is there an underlying motive here on either property owner's part to do it like, I mean, we just did this, or she just did this back in
Right.
June, now we're doing it again for some
And
more property?
this is the craziest thing, I don't know, he said they're very neighborly with one another, and I honestly don't understand, I don't know of a motive, other than he wanted to go ahead and give him a full acre of his land. That's what was told to me.
Where it come in the problem then, they may be neighborly now, but if their kids get a hold of it and they start squabbling, somebody ain't gonna like it, so.
Yeah.
Well, if it's legally done
Mhm.
and it's all documented, then
There's nothing they can do.
there's nothing
Where
to
it
do
is
about it.
right-
That's-
Where it is right now, they could be a squabble over.
And that's the reason you should do it right to begin with.
Have a deed.
Okay. I think that we'll dig into that more as we get into the public hearing.
Okay.
All right.
And all the rest of these at one time.
Yes.
Well, I think there should be some discussion on these now. Christopher, this is a planning meeting. He gave us a letter from one of our commissioners that we should consider. I think all of you have that. In addition to that, I spoke with our county attorney this afternoon and tried to get some guidance from him. And, as we get into these, and I will, tell you what he said as we move on. Christopher, you got this letter, you received this letter, so you want to talk to us a little bit about it?
That's what it basically amounts down to, is conveying a certain viewpoint that one of the commissioners would like, to be in our minds as we muddle over a lot of these A2, A1 situations that are upcoming. He really states it well. And I'll just redirect, how's that? For the record? While everyone has a right to ask for a rezone on their property, we also need to think about the rezones of the A1 to A2, prohibiting intensive farming that needs, I'm remanding this in my own words, I'm sorry. I get to reading it and I'm just like, there's a better way of saying it.
Just read the way it's written.
I think all those trying to rezone from A1 to A2 prohibit intensive agriculture farming, or intensive farming needs to be reminded that while their desire on their property is fine, this is an attempt to strong-arm future decisions for the tract that was slated for A1 farming operations. I refrain from containing the P&Z board at this late hour, or late in the game, but felt I could say this and ask you to provide some objective statements to the board, noting that the future land use map and future boards may not consider A2, A1, RR incompatible. My point is saying just because they want it don't mean they can make others adhere to their desires. He's just putting it out there for y'all's consideration. The short and long of it from the conversation is the areas on the land map for the county is listed for agriculture and intense agriculture in those zones versus high density areas. We haven't had a good map. I know we've talked about this before from past complexes. Hopefully that's going to change but very shortly. But we do not only have our zoning ordinance, but we also have that land use map that should help guide. And that's what this commissioner stood for y'all. He's the only one that put it in writing that we have had.
Would
Okay.
you like that reflected in the minutes or that
We just read
document?
a letter from the commissioner.
Say not put it in.
On this, they wanted to go to A2, but how would that stop from rezoning the property
A1.
A1?
The same as if we were looking at putting, like the conversations we've had about these Commerce Road. In particular, it seems like it's popping up every month where we have intense farming in this area, A1s, A2s, and now little RRs are popping up along the road where we don't allow these rural homes to start taking over the intended land use map for being able to have a cohesive community from high density population to, we don't have any, but I'll use the term hog parlors across the board, and that's for that land use map. comes into play, so if we nickel and dime away at the larger units, we won't have them anymore, and then at the same time, if we allow, say, in whole, for example, a bunch of property to come together, 25 acres, and we got 2 layered houses right up behind Ingalls, might not be to community standards. Might help with some of the tent communities, but not necessarily what they want right behind Ingalls. That's where it's coming from.
Does anybody have a copy of you have a copy of the land use plan?
This is the map.
Land use map?
Is that back?
Yes.
I got a bigger size in there. than you
Yeah.
pull out if you want.
There should have been.
I just have one question. What, all these properties, and we're trying to just talk about them all in one, because they're all
Yeah,
basically the same.
Yes, sir.
In the land use plan, what does it show?
Intense agriculture and agriculture.
In that entire area?
In that entire area, if you look at your map, in my mind, outside of the river corridor that
You can see it
is.
better, I got a bigger one in there. You know,
Yeah, there should be a big fold-out one, and everybody might be back in
Pull it out
the
and it folds out.
packet.
Okay.
But
I'm sorry, I understand, like,
there's a thin line of intense agriculture along the river corridor.
That's the portion.
That's really the main intense agriculture area of Madison County, west of, say, 98. And then as you come closer into Danielsville along the 98, I'm just gonna use corridor for a term, the 98 corridor, everything coming east, if you look at that map, is where, in the past, the history, that's where they pushed the agriculture to, so that we could allow the housing and the boom that would come out of Athens, talking about Monroe, but yeah, you know, the Monroe corridors are coming out, or Walton County, sorry, Monroe's behind. So we can accommodate that, and the county can benefit from it while at the same time remaining in agriculture. This is also a big point with the regional, board as well. Yes, sorry, sir.
I'm sorry, could I, just to, I obviously agree totally with the sentiment behind the keeping this a rural county. I mean, that's 100%. I'm looking at the land use map, and then I'm looking at these places up there. There's some places I think that the cats, you know, the horse is already out of the barn.
Oh, yeah.
That kind of thing. Especially in these two, on Thousand Oaks Road and then on Davis Road. Those are both, are they private roads, both of them?
No.
Just Davis Road?
Yes. Thousands Oaks is a county road.
Well, I mean, it almost feels like you're driving into a subdivision, because there's nice houses on either side, 5 acres, and there's a lot of lots still available. I don't know if, you know, and one of the things I was worried about, I was thinking about was the difference between R1, R2. All it does is prohibit intensive agriculture.
A1,
A1, A2, I'm sorry.
Right.
No, no.
A1, A2. And then, now, but they both only have a 5 acre minimum
to go down
to go down to. Why is an A1 bigger?
to become an A1, to
Yeah.
fit it back together. And this is part of what we're handling now. Sidebar to everything that's going on in conjunction with the comp plan, in conjunction with the regional commission. It's easy to break down, an RR goes anywhere. You can pop it just about anywhere. So, we've got 5 acre RRs as well, but they only have one home on them. So it's harder to put back the property together. And so we do have a minimum requirement of making an A1, which is 25 acres. 25, sorry. Bunch of numbers running through my head, apologize.
If you rezone to an A1, it
To
takes.
to rezone, it requires more, and it is the only one that requires
The 25 acre.
more to go to.
Okay.
So as we take away from it, that's what has been overlooked in the past, that we have taken away without realizing how hard it is to build something like that. And that's something that gets pushed on us.
Because originally, it was a 25 acre cut minimum, that used to be in the zoning ordinance. Like if I were to approve a plat and it was in an A1 zone, it would have to have a minimum lot size of 25 acres. That was done in previous years.
Now, is that in the regs that we see right here with the 25 acres?
No, sir.
This
Oh,
is,
That only applies to rezoning when
that
you.
was early 2002, 2003. I'm sorry, I had been going through some old zoning books, today. I think it was 2003, the last copy, when that was still part of it. But that's part of the problem we're running into. We nick it away and we can't make it bigger. And then the different land uses, when they were looking at the 20 acres and the A2, changed in that point in time, we're talking about 2 decades ago. At that point in time, hobby farm was the big thing that was popping up. Everybody had 2 or 3 head, that sort of thing. It was after the cattle boom. You know what I'm talking about, when feeder steers went over $2, you know, a pound for the first time in forever.
Good old days.
Yeah. Corn was less than 70 cents a bushel too. But I'm not here to discuss ag history. If you want that, talk to me later. It suited the purpose then, and now the purpose has changed, especially with setbacks with poultry farms. Now to meet setbacks, we had talked about it, Mr. Lee, one time, it takes like 20 acres to put 2 laying houses and meet our setbacks if the property is laid out right. When we didn't have setbacks, you could come in on a 5-acre tract and throw in a chicken house or a hog parlor. And nobody thought ever in the South we'd ever be able to do a cattle feed yard or anything like that. The times have changed. In both ways, not only with housing, but for agriculture needs with setbacks to accommodate the housing as well, just as industry has on the 72 corridor. We're having to adjust as that goes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Appreciate that, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
All right. For that side of the story, I guess, you need to hear what my discussion with the county attorney was. He said, in fairness to these people, that anybody can request a rezone regardless of their own reasons. But, you know, so, the one thing that he encouraged us to look at was the land use plan, to what it called for in that particular area. But that being said, going back to what Bruce says, we need to go take a look at this, because I agree with him, down in that particular road down there, and and I'm not trying to predetermine, but even though we're talking about all these together, all of these are not exactly the same. Some of them may need to remain A1, and some of them legitimately may need to go to A2. So I don't think we can prejudge tonight or try to make a decision without going to look at them for ourselves and try to determine where they lay. Because they all have the right to do what they do. Even though, you know, the letter that we got says it's what's the word? An attempt to strong arm. I don't know if that's an attempt or not.
I think it's up to interpretation, I say.
But I think the commissioner's saying we can say, oh, we'll put a condition on
Yes. And we can do that with any of them. We can say no, we can say yes, or we can put conditions on them.
it. Now, are all these, are any of these, forgive me, I don't remember exactly, are any of the parcels over 25 acres? I think it may be 130 acre one, but the rest of them are.
Right around.
Let's say I'm
like
looking at the
15 to 25, there's very few that go over.
39, got a 39, 29.
And I think that goes
72.
to that.
And just
The
looking-
chairman, some of them legitimately, the idea of going larger in that area might not be,
Well, it's,
applicable.
you know, the topography, among other things, prohibits, you know, any kind of intensive, crop farming, for sure.
Yep. Tell me if I'm in left field or something. Knowing that what is the legal aspect? That, you know, okay, I bought this property knowing that it's intense farming when I bought it. And as you say, times are changing, and farming is changing.
Hmm.
So, huh?
And then so's our rural life.
Right, so
Like
that's what I'm
Commissioner,
saying, so
Ben
what
said,
is
who would've
the-
thought we'd had a winery sitting out in Madison
Yeah.
County, that's awesome.
So I'm saying, what is the legal, I mean, this is my property,
Mhm.
and I know that we have a plan, but like you said, things change.
Mhm.
So what is a legal aspect that if you know, if I want to rezone, and I have that right to rezone my property,
Mhm.
and I have a right that, you know, I'm seeing a change that, I'm sure it's based on these chicken farms
Mhm.
coming out there. So, what is the legal aspect of that? How the county and the people,
I don't really think there's a legal aspect of it. I mean, you know, it's whether we determine that this is best suited for the county as a rezone. I don't see any legal ramifications.
yeah.
You know, we've gotta make the decision as to if this fits this county,
Right.
you know. We've said several things. We've said this land use plan ain't no good, but that's all we got. You know, I mean, I hear that all the time, this land use plan is just sloppy, it ain't worth the paper it's written on. But we've got to follow something.
So the comprehensive plan is not going to address any of this?
Well, this is gonna change, but we're talking,
I know, we're talking
we're
about
talking a
now.
year or two down the road.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, I'm gonna jump in here quickly, we're gonna go back to 1999.
Mhm.
Okay, is where all this started. You'll see where this was basically the Davis farm, I guess it was, that was
Yeah.
divided up here, right? Tommy Watkins Construction. And so when you take and you divide it up at that point, you can put conditions on those parcels. The people who bought these lots that have brought these before us right now, a couple of them have a copy of the covenants, and it says, there shall be no commercial chicken houses built on said lands. There shall be no hog operations of any kind on said lands. There shall be no single-wide mobile homes allowed on said lands. This goes to a leadership problem, and what we're trying to work on right now with developing a comp plan that's put something out there. This should have never been developed in this manner if this is what we are supposed to go by.
so that's what.
Because this, the people who paid for this and have built these properties, and we've all been out there, especially on Thousand Oaks Drive, you know, they made a sizable investment, and they want to protect that.
That's what I'm saying.
And that's
yeah.
some of the conditions that we're allowed to be able to put, and they stay with the land on
Right.
this. But, oh, by the way, there's also a gentleman that purchased a 178 acre parcel that adjoins them that is not bound by those. And that's where we find ourselves 23 years later, where someone was sold something, developed a nice residential property that's now, I'll tell you, one of the properties in that cul-de-sac has just come onto the market as well, on Thousand Oaks Drive. There's not a sign when you go down there, but it's on the MLS, you know, and so the rock is in the pond, the ripples are now reaching out there.
So that's
Just-
a legal.
Just to clarify what you're saying, is that document binding for those, for the land, for the lots up there?
Yes. For
It's
this,
not binding as far as the county's concerned. They don't,
We
they
don't
ignore that.
recognize covenant.
That has nothing, the county says that's null and void, that's, has nothing to do with county rules.
Okay, but that's.
so this person can come in there and put a single-wide mobile home on this parcel?
There are no deed restrictions on the property, no recorded.
As far as the county's concerned, there is no deed restriction. That,
That's civil. landowner to those around, just like an HOA and the covenants.
Yeah.
How the HOA has to adhere to it, the community is the one that would process that, and then it becomes a civil action. We wouldn't step in on that one. If somebody chose to fight it or go against it with a lawyer and pursue that course through Superior Court,
Uh-huh.
that's between them, their neighbors, and God.
Mr. Chairman, if I might just make just a comment to clarify that. We
Yes.
chased that, because there were several of those property owners that were sold that with the understanding that these were deeded restrictions. But for whatever reason, they were never recorded, so I don't know if the realtor or the lawyer that handled the sale of them did, but they bought those properties with the understanding those were deed restrictions, but they were not recorded.
And this that says it was filed and recorded with Michelle Strickland, the clerk, it is.
There's no record of it. The deeds are there, but the deed restrictions are not. We looked, I said, Christine,
But the other thing that we've gotta consider is,
but you're right, you're absolutely right, that is the conflict. These people bought, and this is not an issue here, but from a county perspective, yeah, it kinda is. It's tough, it's tough.
well, this kind of falls into what I think, like the decision was made last night because of that subdivision that was adjacent to these 5-acre properties.
Mhm.
Well, we've got this nice residential area up here that's adjacent to this big old area over here that you can put intensive agriculture in. May not fit. So we've got to make the decision as to if it fits or doesn't fit on an individual basis. We can't just say, well, just because of it don't fit. We've got to look at it and determine and make our decision and recommend to the Board of Commissioners, and then they can take it from there and go whichever way they wanna go with it. So we've gotta leave it open, we gotta be fair to all involved here, and go take a look at it and make our own decision. Using that document, which is not good with the county, using the land use plan, which we say is no good, and all this other stuff. We gotta consider all of this in making our decision, to recommend to the county commission, individually. And we've got to listen to the public at our next meeting to hear what they got to say. We may be taking their reasons all out of context. I don't know. We gotta listen to them, because they've got the right to speak.
Well, how many of these properties are in the current land use map is strictly for, farming area? Y'all have any idea?
Yeah.
Majority,
Yeah.
the vast majority.
Should we go with the land use map now, or just not, or just make the decision when it comes before us?
By the ordinance, we look at the ordinance.
Take all of it into consideration.
We have to take it all into consideration, but it specifically states our ordinance and the land use map, as well as, I think it's raised public opinion.
Yeah.
As well, that's why everybody has the right to come and talk and speak about it, and then, you know, a good enough argument may sway, you know, something that others don't agree with. And then, at the same time, it may be dead against the core principle of what's currently available to us to base our judgment on.
Help me with the commercial, the farming issues. A1, intensive farming, that means commercial, is that what we're talking about? Okay, and
I
A2.
think that's the wrong word, not commercial.
Well, what, they say intense, but mostly what, the big farms with
Correct.
more than like 20 chicken houses or something.
Just confined livestock.
Okay.
That's the only difference between A1 and A2 is confined livestock.
When
Oh,
you
okay,
start
so
switching
that's-
over to house on use term animal units. now.
So what were you gonna,
So,
cause you can have livestock in A two, but it's just not,
It's limited.
For
Maybe.
personal
Fine.
consumption.
okay.
Confined feeding operations, is that the right word they use? I may be getting some USDA terminology confused with county, but, intense feeding operations.
Oh,
So, like, regular agriculture, in general, A2. I've got 50 chickens out running around with their flight wings cut off, and I gather eggs, and I've got a kennel license, and I sell them at public market.
right,
That's fine, they're all out and about. I have 6 broiler houses with, 150,000 birds, give or take. I try to be as accurate as possible. 150,000 birds, they travel no more than 4 foot between water and feed their whole life. Intense. Agriculture, confined, intense.
but those are usually farms that are selling to bigger markets. Okay.
Okay, I mean, we're not here tonight to make a decision. I think we've probably heard enough that we can go out, look at it, and listen to the public input to have enough to make a decision, to make a recommendation. The reason I'm trying to move on is because we've got a lot of other things here tonight that we must address before we leave here. Number 3, discuss amending zoning orders to include permitting residential and agricultural use driveways and cover installation on public roadways. That was Chairman Higdon's request. Chairman Higdon's not here, so I guess you're it. I'm looking forward to it.
I'm sorry,
All right?
Mr. Chairman, would you repeat that again? Okay. What you said?
Where are you
Discuss amending zoning ordinance to include permitting residential and agricultural use driveways and culverts, installation on public roadways.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Guess that's for our discussion or to come up with a,
Yes, discussing amending the zoning, sorry. I've been to so many road emails and culverts today.
What's he on?
Number 3,
number 3. On your,
I've got 3 and 4 together.
Here's agenda three.
on your
They
agenda.
have this one.
Yes, yes, I'll look at 4 months.
3 and 4 together.
Yes. 3 and 4 have been
3
tagged
is,
in one email together.
the top
and
is
then
gonna
there
talk
should
about
be-
pole barns, and the
Right.
second page talks about the.
Residential agricultural use driveways, culverts, and public.
And do they have a copy of the permits? Proposed permits?
Yes.
Okay. What's presented to you at the top of the page, it will say 58-162.
Yes.
This is essentially breaking down everything that the county's desiring to go to. We're in a lot of conversations right now. We need to start a conversation on our end, because either we need to be part of the discussion, or we'll just flat out have to adopt what comes down through county ordinance. It kind of lays it out, what they're looking for as far as width of driveways coming off of a county road, the culverts that are required, and the process that it'll take, and its approval and the fee structure. Just like a building permit or a rezoning permit, this is just another aspect for the county to understand what's going on in it. Right now, just like today, code enforcement side, got a notice somebody was fitting in a driveway, had no idea what was going on. We didn't know what was going on. We go over there, they're disturbing land, they don't have permits, they don't have an EPD permit. This is another way for the county not only to protect the roadways, but for us to stop trying to catch up, figuring out what's going on before they come in, or before we get a letter from the EPD. It helps all the way around. But this is what's been presented to y'all for conversation for us to vote on.
So do you want feedback on this now, later? Is there a timetable on this?
Fast.
Fast.
The desire is to move the pace, with some of the new, road requirements as well. So, it's getting very involved, not only with planning and zoning and the building aspect and code enforcement, but also with our road department as well. Some people put in culverts, they're not the right size, they wash out, we got road failures, and then at the same time, somebody didn't fit in a culvert, they need medical services, we bottomed out an ambulance, trying to get to them. Called in another ambulance, now one sector of the county's down because we're trying to cover up from another when they simply could have fit in a metal pipe instead of a plastic, or a 18-inch instead of a 12.
Okay, so what you're asking this board to do is to study this,
Yes.
recommend changes, or adopt as is, or recommend to adopt as is. Okay, and this is our business meeting, this is to enlighten us on what's going on.
Yeah.
So we will actually take a vote on this at our next meeting. That'll give you time to study it, to go over it, to, if there's anything that you see that you don't think fits.
So this is a very condensed version there. They would like for us to adopt like that. Is my understanding, what it's been.
So any modifications, changes, whatever, should we hold these until our next meeting?
Yes.
And try to wrap all this up?
Yes.
Or get these to you in the meantime?
If y'all have questions, I always open door. The sooner you can get to me, maybe I can get an answer
But as
beforehand.
far as modifications, changes that need to be made to this, get those to you.
Try to shoot them to me beforehand.
I got one question right here. It's in C. It says minimum length is 20 feet, but the driveway has gotta be a minimum of 10 feet
In width,
in
Yeah.
width.
but they have to put in at least 20-foot culverts.
So, okay.
Minimum driveway at this point in time is 10 foot. You come in, that's county standard. As the standard increases to something that's better suited for current vehicles, weights, et cetera, it's gonna require a 20-foot section.
So in other words, you could have, as long as you have 10 feet, you could have lot sticking out,
Yeah.
cover sticking out. Okay.
20 foot on each side.
Yeah.
20 foot.
But, I will let y'all know there was a lot of work, DOT background for what they require on state roads. It all got, condensed, down to this form. But, as always, y'all know, it's open door. You got questions or anything that you wanna put up for review beforehand, so we can make our next meeting, that may be a little long, streamlined, and to get it ahead. I'll be more than happy to help facilitate that.
Can I ask something?
Yes, ma'am.
Cause I've seen a lot of people, you know, building new homes way back, and they have these, rock driveways right
Mhm.
now. So are we saying that culvert should be in there at the time they start the process of, is that in here?
That's actually in our building codes.
Oh, okay.
Over there with ICC, whenever a new home goes in, they have the main entrance and also a construction entrance. Now, sometimes the construction entrance becomes the main entrance, but there is what's the right way to phrase it? Bless you. Bless you. That wasn't the word I was looking for, but it's one that came out. There's some issues that have to be resolved side by side. As officer discretion, building inspector discretion. If you're in a subdivision and you only have 40 foot of frontage in front of the house, it's gonna be a construction entrance that then becomes the main entrance, and the culvert at that point in time will have to be in place. It may just get paved over.
Okay, well, that's what I'm saying, because, I mean, these are all main roads,
Yes.
so that culvert should be in there.
From the get-go.
So, is that something that we should be looking at and that should be on this amendment? No, it's just in the building.
That's just it. And then, some things, that are county code are adopted through building code that aren't part of planning and zoning code. So it's a big trifecta we have to put together. Sorry?
Just I guess a question here, you know, your driveway and culvert permit, for example, it says minimum required pipe size and it's left open, but we've specified that as 15. Is 15 the minimum diameter that you would accept?
That is coming from the road department as a minimum. There may be some instances where it requires larger, depending on the ditch or the water flow. So while we have a 15-inch minimum, when they go out to inspect it before the drive's ever approved or the permit's ever approved, the road department would go out and tell them, no, you're gonna have to go to a 24-inch. Instead, to do flow, or maybe they need riffraff and rock to help with the washout and water going around. It's left open for the larger situations. Well, one document not only cover residential, but commercial, business industry.
Okay, and these have not been published yet?
No.
Okay, so the-
Just here tonight.
Perfect, well, I mean, it's, yeah. Okay.
One more thing, we were handling, or we had a service that the county provided in putting in culverts, so we discontinued that.
Because of private industry, just like how we used to bury dead animals.
Right.
We were providing a minute service that was undercutting businesses within the county.
And now we're replacing that with a permitting process where we were catching that, I guess, at that point. And so it's,
No, we can't, we're doing anything.
Yeah,
Just put them in.
I see where this goes. You continue to layer on, and there's more employees, which continues to add to more taxes. You know, I mean, it just, where does it stop? And I live here and I pay taxes, so I wanna be mindful of
So instead of,
eliminating a service to replace it with a fee to
Yes,
hire a
sir.
person to increase my taxes.
oh yeah, no, I get that. And I'm frugal because it's inappropriate to say cheap at these meetings. But I'm
I
frugal
resemble that
individual.
remark, yeah,
Yes,
so I'm good.
The cost analysis from a year ago with what we were having to put out, and I'm sure Mr. Chandler probably
Oh, no,
has more to say to this than I do, but, we were expelling a large amount of money in gravel and culverts at a discounted rate where we were undercutting local businesses. And it was costing money for us to go and get the gravel, have it out for piecemeal, for us to have the culverts to piecemeal it out, and then we were falling short on other projects.
Some of what I'm doing is playing devil's advocate, because once again, when you see that you discontinue a service,
Mhm.
but now you're requiring a permit,
For new coming in.
right, the same type of thing there, that's all. I just wanna make sure that I remember that correctly.
Yes,
So will
Okay,
you be
if you-
policing this?
no, this will be the road department.
Okay. If you guys will look over this, see if there's any change made, if you need to get with Chris, get with him, we will, address it at our next meeting. Paul Bonds,
Chairman,
yes,
is that gonna be the public hearing meeting or the regular business?
that'll be the
meeting?
public hearing meeting
Okay,
after we'll get through with all the public hearings.
okay.
Christopher, Paul Barnes.
Pole barns, pole barns are being put up, there are no permit required, for open pole barn, and people are coming in, they're building a pole barn, and then they're enclosing it. It sometimes turns into rental properties as well, since there's already a structure on the property. Something that has been advised for us to talk about is looking at permitting pole barns, and also the size of the pole barns, or accessory, accessory structures, et cetera. We used to permit pole barns that were bigger than 10 by 10, I remember that right. We did away with it, we want to bring it back. But at the same time, we want to unify the size of permittable structures, so that if you build a backyard shed for your lawnmower and it's under a certain size, you know, that's fine. If you build a pole barn to house your RV or your tractor, or some large, you know, you've got 5 vehicles, at what size and coverage do we want it to be? So it's being recommended to me to ask for y'all for consideration and to vote on changing. Where is the pole barn? Accessory dwellings, y'all look, item number 4.3.
For what?
4.2, sorry. I just have got these glasses, I'm trying to learn how to read all over it. On the paper, or if you're in your books, section 12.2, if you're trying to find it in your larger book.
It's in our packet.
Yeah, it's in the packet.
It's, yes, sir, it's in your package.
This will,
Right.
section 12.2.
Oh, right.
So it's the accessory buildings, if they're, currently says if they're, 288 square feet or greater in size. We need to make a choice on the size, the 2 recommended sizes at this point. Building inspection and ICC code that is adopted is 200 square feet of a structure. That's a general number. If you look at our county as a whole, the other side of that is rounding up slightly and saying 300 square feet. So that, say you wanted somewhere to park your camper, you know, like those cover pools are about 28-foot long camper. You can build a 10 by 30 building, have it undercover. If you wanna go a little wider, say a tractor with a bush hog and a front end loader on it, you do 12 by 24, you're still right there with it in open sides. So we have that consideration. Those are the 2 numbers that were put out to me, from staff and other officials that have been brought into it. So, to try and make it simple, something for y'all to eat on, instead of trying to see, what square footage is best. If y'all wanna go out and map it off in your backyard, you know, I'm all for it, but 200 and 300, I think, are the magical numbers, that I've found in my research. And then saying, instead of it just being a, covered building, that it's for any building of that size. in the
Now, I
county.
did have to Google 288 square feet to see how big that was.
Yeah. It's not the easiest number in the field, like, is that 11 3/4 inches, or what is that by 20? Not that we've had to do that on a daily basis. But that's the other aspect of pole barns, for us to try and come together with that, to say it doesn't matter if it has sizes or not, if it's just, I'm still gonna stick to those numbers, if it's 200 or 300, that size, permit it. That way we know if they close it in when they originally permitted it, or when we find it later. Otherwise, we have no trail of how long it's been there, whether or not it was pre-existing beforehand. It may be brand new tin and rotten down timbers. We don't know if we don't rip out the walls. I see a question in your eye.
Yeah, well, go ahead.
Really, just a clarification. All those, the ubiquitous carports that we have, you know, shaped, you know, with, you know, all metal structures that they come in and do in like 2 hours.
Yeah.
Is that covered, is that called a pole barn?
No, that's a pre-manufactured structure. Did I remember that right?
Mhm.
Pre-manufactured structure.
Although they put it together there.
It's like Lego,
Prefab.
pre-fab. They just decide where they want that.
So what would be the definition really for the pole barn, that they actually, you know, build it with poles?
Erected or moved into the county is the key word right now, just as a structure.
Just the structure, doesn't, you know, pole barn doesn't, any
It's
structure.
It's, kinda like mobile home versus modular homes.
Mm-hmm.
It's still a home. Wasn't erected here, but there's small classification there. And unfortunately, the carports are classified differently. Because they're classified as a carport, and then they may or may not have an enclosure on the back of it.
Pole barn is defined in here. It's built of poles and a roof, may or may not have a floor,
I got you.
can't have up to 3 sides.
Yeah, that's what I thought, only had 3 sides.
But that is.
And that was the three side, that's eliminates enclosure, supposedly.
Yeah.
Well, you
We
don't
did
wanna
that.
make an exception for pole barns then, you want it to be covered like all other structures.
All the structure.
But with
My
square
con-
footage. Yeah.
My concern here is that I think because pole barns is one of those things that has been, it once was permitted, now it's not, it's getting singled out. In here, we talk about implement sheds, barns, pole barns, stockyards / cow barns, storage buildings. What I'm concerned about is, I think there are zones, especially residential type zones, RRs and down, that to me, it might be appropriate to have those permitted, but when you get into agricultural areas, it's usual and customary to have storage sheds, implement, and all those things. And I'm just wondering, are we gonna, is it right to impose permitting process on a 200-acre farm to have, if they wanna build an implement shed, to have to go through this process?
Lee, I think you're absolutely right, that it may not be, but this problem was created by the public themselves by enclosing these things.
I understand,
So
but you could,
so there gotta be some kind of, I understand where they're trying to come with the permit, is to control people doing what they're not supposed to
I
do.
understand, but we have permits for a lot of other things, like, building a deck on a house and people, you're gonna find those people that adhere to those and do the right thing, and then those that are gonna try to get away with something. And until you catch them, they're not guilty. And to me, it's kind of like, yes, we've had some issues with pole barns, but people can take sheds and implement buildings and all these other things and modify them to whatever they want to, and nobody ever know about it. That's why I'm saying,
That's where-
it just seems to me like pole barns are getting singled out, and those are pretty crucial to farming operations, and personally, I would like to find a way to give the agricultural areas or the farming operations a reprieve from the permitting process, the strict permitting
Yeah,
process.
I think we got into that, I think Canolis and probably Terry could get into it. We had a situation here a couple of years ago where it was, they wanted to build a pole barn. Then it come down to it, they enclosed it, I think they enclosed it, run electricity, run power to it, and everything without getting it permitted. It was just on a big farm. And I think that's where this come into effect at, because of that same situation. Because it was supposed to be just plain
Right.
3-sided, then they went ahead, and next thing you know, it was done grown into had electricity and all run to it.
And I know people that have built sunrooms and other things on their houses and never got a permit for them, and until you catch them, they do it.
Well, is there gonna be a fee?
There's the standard, building, fee, just as, fees, better than I do with the building aspect when it comes to non-residential structures. We've got square footage, we've got power, there's a lot of
Well,
different fees.
let me ask it a different way. Is there a fee for a pole barn now?
No, sir.
Okay? Is there gonna be a fee for a pole barn if this is approved?
Yes.
Now, the way to get by what Lee's talking about, if there's not a fee, but there's just a process to go through to get a permit, this is for control, not for profit, then I don't see anything wrong with that being for everybody. So you can have some control. Now, if you're gonna put a fee on it, then I kinda disagree with Lee, You know, why make a rule for farmers and a rule for residential? The rule should apply to everybody.
And the fee would go to cover the inspector's time.
Why-
I mean,
It's-
we have a
I see
right
both
to
ways,
disagree.
but then, just like, Stackhouse, for example, it's only closed in on 3 sides, it's permitted, whether it has electrical or not, and has to go through an inspection process. So, you know as well as I do, Stackhouses become equipment sheds a lot faster than a pole barn does. Because that cement floor, and it being sided on 3 sides and paid for by the federal government, or at least cost shared, is a lot nicer than me trying to come out of pocket. So, you know, people don't abuse the system one way or the other. I break it down to drug dealers. Drug dealers are never doing wrong until they're caught.
And Lee, I see what you're saying, but if I'm on 25 acres, when I'm in a resident, my neighbor's more likely to tell on me than I could see something out in a 25-acre farm.
Yeah.
They could get away with it more than the resident person can.
And we may face that issue if there's no home on the property, that generally, well, we actually can't, allow a building of any type, storage building, on a piece of property if there's not a home on it already. That's our guidelines as of now, just for the fact that people are building that and ended up living in there. So we always have to ask the person and verify if there's a residence on that property, and if not, there's no permit.
Okay, a lot. Absorb.
Just before we kind of beat this.
Yeah, I get all the fun projects, right?
Yeah.
So,
So, essentially, pole barn is almost a non-relevant term. Essentially, we're talking about accessory buildings greater than so many square feet.
Mhm.
Right now it's 288. Your recommendation is?
288.
300, 200, you,
Personal or professional, be specific.
Where'd 288 come from?
yeah.
That's a great number, and somebody thought of it before I was here. I don't know do you know what they chose to it? No. Personal?
Professional, you know, in terms of people that then take these pole barns and
Make
change
them
them into
into-
something else. What size are those usually? I mean, it's,
They're all running right around 300 feet.
How many feet do you wanna live in?
Yeah.
At what point are you comfortable, and at what point are you not comfortable, basically, is
so
what that boils
essentially,
down to.
this is about the right size of 288,
300 feet. Personal opinion, I feel 300 is better because it allows ag and small businesses to build a structure to pit implements. And just like I said, if it was 10 by 30, you put a small tractor with a loader and a bush hog in it, it would be covered. Where if you went under that, then you're, in opinion, really hitting agriculture, but not so much anybody else. I think 300 is the happy number. Professionally, it makes everything easier when it flows the same, just like how ICC's got 200 square feet. It makes numbers flow, nobody's getting confused, you know, which is where and which is there. I think that's where the county and the board.
What is ICC?
The International Code of.
I'm in the private sector, I don't work for the government,
Okay.
so all these acronyms.
International Construction Code.
Gotcha.
Code of Construction.
Is this something that we're having issues, okay? And so, somebody's living in a pole barn without a septic tank?
Living in a pole barn with a propane heater, a flashlight, 5-gallon bucket in the corner. On dirt. And they were able to sneak it in. And they think it's acceptable.
And a permit's gonna change that.
Permit is gonna make it
I'm
easier
not
for us to
trying to
lock up.
compliment it, I'm just-
In Andy Griffith's day, nobody had radar, but they still knew they were speeding, but they had to be there to catch them. Radar just helped them later down the road. This is just another tool to help quality of life. While I'm personally anti against a bunch of rules and regulations. Being on the other side, in my day-to-day work, this would be
It's a tool,
tool
it's a tool that you can use.
to increase quality of life. So I'm next to.
All right, does everybody know what their homework is to decide how, you know, whether we're gonna approve this or not?
School.
Is this something with a deadline the same way? All of these things, like you wanna get them done and vote on them next meeting?
It would've been done yesterday.
Yeah, and that's 2 weeks ago, and they normally let me know.
Okay, we'll move on to the next one. Discuss zoning issues concerning mobile sawmills.
Yes.
So, it's me again.
Yes, you did.
All right, 7, there's the little agenda that has been nicely highlighted. I really appreciate that. We're looking at section 7.11.12, temporary sawmills. This is what we're on that. That's what we're trying to.
That's what we currently have.
So our current definition, as it's laid out in the book, is temporary sawmills and planing mills used for removal and processing timber on adjacent acreage, provided the mill and storage areas are not located more than 400 foot to a resident other than a resident of the landowner themselves. We now have a large amount of people calling in the end of last year and this year that would like to be compliant, that would like to be able to operate small mobile sawmills and to leave them set up in place in case the neighbors want to come on the whole 9 yards without having to stop and set up. If you looked at it in a commercial level, when they come into timber harvest, they normally have 1 or 2 landings and they pull all the timber to it. They want to be able to go out on site, pull timber in from around them, process a community, and move about their way. But they're constantly having to pick up and move, or they're getting told their sawmills, they're in the wrong zone. They can't cut it here, they've got to travel it out. This is the only spot where we even mention a temporary structure. So that homework when we first brought it up is, do we want to broaden the definition? Do we want to add something in for their mobility? Or do we want to constrain them? So, I know last time we talked about blade size, we talked about mobility of axles, setup, a few other things. And I know I've had emails with some of y'all concerning this. I'm trying to condense it all down. I don't know if y'all have had any further insight, brainstorms, stuff we want to bring about before we try to vote or amend something, or something y'all would like to have us write up down in planning and zoning to be presented to y'all.
I think we need to come up with a plan of what actually is a mobile, like some of these want certain size limit on that, so they can use it and set guidelines of where they can go. But then this 400-foot plan wouldn't fit for one of these portable sawmills.
Or a time lapse.
Yeah, no, this right here, way I read it, is for the big commercial sawmills. The portable sawmills that you pull behind the truck and all, you pull your regular pickup truck, it should be set different from this. So I think we need to come up with 2 different
Plan from.
plans for each one of them, set size limits on what we actually do.
And there's some, that was just brought to my attention as well. They're mobile and not even on a trailer. They cut a log, they put it on a stand, and, like a Husqvarna or a steel chainsaw, they simply have a rail. And they do just sawmill planks right there for your use. They're really cheap too. But, you know, there's a whole other aspect of being mobile that doesn't even involve axles. So that one was just brought to my attention because I didn't know.
Yeah, I looked over the internet and you're right, there's, you know, everything, if you got a
chainsaw, you got a sawmill, essentially. The setups they have, but what, before we address this, I mean, we need, I guess, set the parameters, and based on your experience with problems, I guess, what, we wanna avoid problems, but we don't wanna limit the freedom of people to just, use their land to cut wood and that sort of thing.
Well, the funny thing is, this emanated not from a problem, but from citizens wanting to work with us to where they're compliant. This is a rare situation where it's a positive to start with, instead of facing an issue and trying to find a hole around it. They're wanting to work with us and work within the limits. So there's a need, especially when I'm getting 3 to 4 phone calls, in a, I don't know, 12 to 20 day period over this. No, I wouldn't say a whole month, but that's neither here nor there. Where people are like, have you made progress? Do you know if I can set up here or not? And I'm like, it's undefined. I don't wanna tell you you can do it, and then you get a ticket. Especially if it has to come from me, and I just told you it was okay. It's kinda not where I want to be.
Could I stop you there?
Yes, sir.
What would you get a ticket from?
Be for us.
If there's,
Not
if
applying.
there's no defined violation, if there's nothing defined, how can you give them a ticket?
Because sawmills are only allowed in certain zones, and when they set up, they have to be within 400 foot of a residence and no closer. So when they go in to saw, if the neighbors, he can't set up appropriately, or the she or.
So you do have rules.
Yeah.
You already have rules. So what we're asked to do is to extend those rules, clarify those rules, or what?
Clarify.
Should we?
Clarify.
I was looking at some, I did some of that homework.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I was looking at Cherokee County,
Mhm.
and they said that, portable, mobile or portable sawmills shall only be permitted on property not less than 5 acres. So they had some,
Well, shouldn't we need to set something up where they could use the portable sawmills in different zones instead of just one?
Just the 2 zones.
because they said most of it was because people were, in a residential area, people were complaining because of the noise
Mhm. Or the time lapse.
and the time, yeah.
You wouldn't wanna set up a portable sawmill in subdivision.
Yeah. And make the cul-de-sac go together. But I think where they were going with what we have, we need more clarity and more definition on what we're gonna consider that mobile sawmill.
Well, I think you'd be defeating the purpose if you made you could only have portable sawmill in a A1 or A2 zone. Because most people, if they got a small piece of property, they want a tree down or whatever, and they want it sawed up, it's not gonna be in this A2 or A1, so.
That's where the big sawmill should be in the A1 or A2. Then these portable sawmills, we should set it where they could go into smaller residential areas.
Set up maybe with a time limit.
And there has to be a time limit or something,
Yeah.
Now,
know,
does that affect,
keep away from the noise.
Yes,
that doesn't affect a company that comes out
like a tree service,
Yeah.
tree surgeon, they're taking it down and removing it. They're
and,
not
no, but some
processing
of
there.
them, yeah, one came out, he did his right there, he had a little.
Ground it up.
Shredded it up.
Yeah, they ground it and took it
Yeah.
away, or either they dump it at a cost them. to
But he's talking
process
about make a sawing
Some-
wood.
Sawing
so-
wood.
Oh,
Mobile
okay.
sawmill.
Yeah, where it's all.
Oh, where it's left there, okay.
But if y'all have ideas, I would happily mash them together and present something to y'all. If y'all would bring the ideas to me via email or paper or come in, give them to me, and that way it's not me, a non-appointed or elected official. I can help y'all put together all your ideas in some positive.
So maybe kind of the homework for us is help come up with a straw man, say this is what we're thinking about.
Now, is this one of those, should've been done yesterday?
This is us trying to be courteous to
Okay,
citizens instead of
So,
everybody else.
so we got some time
Yes,
to work with this one.
yes.
All right, move on to the next one, my favorite one. Discuss defining the term grandfather. This is another tough one.
So,
Okay, you wanna present something?
man, I should get charged by the word. You wanna give my throat break and maybe tell them what you got on the
Sure,
paper?
absolutely. Grandfathered in our current zoning ordinance, it just says any non-conforming building or structure, lot, and use of property that was in place when zoning started on January 1st, 1994. Let's see. And, you know, we've had some hearsay and thearsay, you know, some parts of the ordinance says that, certain things have to be put back in the same footprint. And then there's other parts that the year comes into effect. I actually had a discussion with Mike Pruitt about it, and, so it just kind of varies all throughout the ordinance.
Which I think you laid out for them in the opinion articles and provisions.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So as y'all can see, depending on what section you look at,
Yes.
it carries a different context.
Mhm.
And it's not uniform, across the board.
So our challenge is to make it uniform.
Yes, sir. Because when people come in, say for a rezone, or they do have an issue with non-conforming properties, lot, or change, where something has changed, they can reference one section, well, this applies to me. And without our knowledge, the next person come in, flip the page, and they can make it fit for them. Across the board, and it's a hard call, but not only for the Board of Commissioners, and for the P and Z board, but for us in the office as well, on how best to present it and to clarify it out. Is it a business? They were selling ice cream, and now they're selling ice cream and donuts. Does that change the grandfather status? It's still a food industry. It was an ice cream business, and now it's a speaker shop.
And
Well,
that,
it's a business, but their business plans changed. So where do we draw the line? I just threw those out of my head, so they're not really.
and if I may interject,
Yes, ma'am, of course.
I think I did enclose the, email, it's agenda item number 4. The email that I thought would be helpful, between Teresa Patton and Mike Pruitt, with their permission. I have, made this available to you guys. And, just some key points is, let's see, the use has to be substantially in the same character. And this is, let's see, grandfather uses run with the land, so change of ownership is irrelevant. And then, let's see,
The probability, is it a year old or is it 20 years old?
right. And that's what's unclear.
Yeah.
And, and we did take the 1 year time limit out of the ordinance, but then he said that we do have it for, I'm sorry. Like when things are burned up and, you know, need to be replaced back on a certain spot, that does have the 12 month.
It has to be done within the.
Yes, sir. So, I mean,
So what if they don't do the metro?
then they lose their
Then
grandfather
they lose their
status.
grandfather status.
But I mean, I don't know if that should stand nowadays, because of getting materials and going through process.
I mean, they'll laugh with this one. A home that is insured is probably gonna be in an RR or a correct zone. A camper, for instance, that burned down, like the two of them, that were grandfathered in as living areas before 1994 that we still have to honor, no matter our rules. If they burned down and they couldn't replace them back, then it would bring up to code. That's the other aspect. Most of that coverage is not for just worst case scenario, but also for making sure everything gets brought back. Public code says the safety net as well. Granted, it may not be fully replaced, say in 12 months, because material demands right now at the warehouse, progress is made inside of 12 months.
Okay, it's progress,
Yeah,
as long as
they
progress is
got a
being.
permit, they got a footing, then they're under that building, inspection that's good. And every time they make another step, we got footers laid, you got another 6 months extended on. Foundation is up, we're starting to frame, bam, next inspection, and it carries on. So they have a window, and it can be extended throughout, so long as they're making forward progress.
What if a person had a building that was previously an owned business, and it was abandoned for, well, let's say abandoned, but it wasn't used for business or whatever for 10 years. And all of a sudden, somebody comes in, and it was an ice cream shop, and they want to make it a speaker shop. Is it still grandfather?
Now,
That's where we're finding definitions, the use of the property itself, and then, just like with easements, we have terms of abandonment without use. None of that's applied into grandfather. Folks just come in, and we've had conversations, every one of us in this room have had conversations about grandfather. At what point did grandfather die? But at what point did it no longer conform? If it's not used in a decade, does that mean it reverts back? If it's in an inappropriate zone, most of these grandfather clauses are being used to extend non-conforming properties, non-conforming uses. So say it was a business that was grandfathered in, I have no idea about the health code on ice cream, but we'll keep going with Baskin Robbins here. It used to be an ice cream store, the cow stopped giving milk and they stopped making ice cream. And then the grandson graduated college, found a new way to make ice cream with goat's milk or some such mess. And now he brought it back. Was it still business owned? Well, that's no trouble, it's just goat ice cream. God help me, I don't know if there's really such a thing instead of cream. But it's all got to do with the land map and how it's changing. But the grandfather clause, think about Hightower or the Barrett situation, how much more help it would have been having the white lines on the side of the road to help us know when we were getting in the ditch, to help us define what was happening. And
So
I think it's important.
In other words, you want us to come up and say something like if it's, they had a business there and it sets for 3 years. Should we keep it as grandfathered in with a similar business or not? We need to come up with guidelines where we change it. But if it comes in and changes different business, we should not consider it grandfather, they'd have to get it rezoned for whatever they're going to.
Correct.
No, this is where I have a problem, especially with residents. When you change the lot sizes, now, that property that may have, I probably, okay, an acre and a half, I could put a home. Okay, it burned down or something and I could not rebuild it, or the person passed away and now it's their kids, and now you change lot sizes for residences now 3 acres. Okay, that becomes a desert. I mean, you can't do anything with that property.
It can be absorbed by another, and if they didn't build it back in time due to a death or something of that nature, housing is its own accord, and the lot on which it was built. And then you start getting into lot size.
Yes,
We
sir.
had issues with that where, I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about it before it comes up. No names, but say somebody had an RR that was a half acre, and house burned down. Now we just have an RR sitting out that's a half acre, that's a non-conforming property. Are we gonna allow it to continue to be a non-conforming property? as an appointed board and elected officials, is that something that y'all want to continue as allowing a non-conforming property, or do we want to have it as this property needs to change, it needs to come into the county comp plan, it needs to come into ordinance, it needs to be brought up to standard?
But, I mean, that family, that's what we're running into. Because people can't do anything with their property.
We're talking about
So-
inside the city limits.
Yeah, but I'm saying even the county, if the county changes, then I have property I can't sell. You know, I can't put a resident on it, so it becomes a burden to me. So,
We have a lot
I
of
mean,
those.
it should, that's why I see grandfather.
And that's something,
That's something we'll have to determine.
That should be grandfathered in, something like that, say the half acre lot. If you could build a house on that half acre lot, it was there, but when it was zoned RR, you should be able to put another house on it. And go from there, because you're not that,
It's
you
gonna
got a
be
piece of
something.
property, you're gonna have to go out and buy bigger, more land.
Yeah.
Think about it though. What if it's abandoned for 20 years?
That should-
And what if everything around it has changed, the whole thing around it has changed, so, I mean, you gotta think about the whole
picture.
picture, not just the small picture.
also,
You gotta look at the whole picture of, you know, I mean, you gotta consider everything, how long it's been, you know, what the area it has changed to, or whatever, you know, it's just not a cut and dry, just because it was a house on that half acre lot. You know, things can change and make it totally inappropriate.
what if it couldn't perk now? What if it was 50 years old, say
Right.
older grandfather, and they had an outhouse? 'Cause I've actually ran into this one. They had an outhouse. They wanted to build back. They can't perk. There's no septic available. So how am I gonna allow a home to come onto a property and it be compliant when they don't have the capacity to handle the household people matters? I think I said that right, right?
Bruce, go ahead.
Ooh, well, yeah, so essentially what we're trying to do is make the term grandfather better defined, and more comprehensive. Right now, it simply says any building that was before 94 is okay.
Yeah.
Or property.
And, you know, grandfather passes with the change of owner.
Grandfather status is attached to the land.
Attached to the land, not its ownership.
Tax land. And any non-conforming use or uncompliant building, not destroyed, not rebuilt within a year, requires rezoning. So any non-conforming use or a building that burned, incompliant building that burned, has a year. And that 1 year for use and rebuilding, I think may be the thing that makes it different. The difference of, you know, it doesn't sit for 20 years and things, you know, over a year, the whole area is not to change, I don't know. Is that kind of what you're looking for, some more definition like that?
This has been brought up by so many
Mhm.
people that we are looking for a plethora of different views, not only
Yeah.
land use and time. Oh my goodness, it is a long list. I'm trying to narrow it down for sake of time, but, I'll simplify it, we can put a list together of all the different uses, but there needs to be more clarity. I jokingly tell everybody, grandfather was a vet, but we don't know what war he fought in. Just give me a little bit more clarity, was it World War I or World War II, Vietnam? Did he serve? I don't know, I just know he's my grandfather and he was a vet. You know, I need clarity. And for all that, I need different points of view so that I'm able to present something to y'all and to other boards.
That being said, Chris, I need to say this is, I understand the wanting to get all these things done very quickly, sometimes you do them real quickly and you make vast mistakes. And this is one that is real complex,
This is not a fish.
you know, you know, I would suggest that we don't push this one.
No, sawmill,
I mean, it's something we can do
yeah.
and will do, but we don't need to be under a time restriction of next week.
This one is us. This one's an in-house, sort of thing, so to say, with the sawmills, hopefully before fall and bad weather comes.
Right.
You know, we have that idea for us. I think grandfather will forever be evolving. So if we can add to it now, that's not to say that we can't add to it later on as well, or take away. You know, it goes both ways. But I fully agree with that.
All right, let's go to number 5. Discuss amending the preliminary plat approval criteria to allow the boards more discretion. Can we take 5, 6, and 7 together? Kinda? Well, no, okay. Let's take 5. What do we want to amend?
Let's, guys, sorry, I'm sorry.
No, just on number 5, in the subdivision regulations, Chairman Higdon had discussed wanting to have the preliminary plat approval criteria, I guess, more stringent, so that the boards will have more discretion with it. Isn't that about right, Christopher? He just, the way it is now, we really don't have any option but to approve it if all the boxes have been checked.
Correct. If they can come in and provide, reasonable answers without us, the boards, the staff, being able to go a little more in depth without, I don't know if crossing the line is the right word, but, asking what we shouldn't. We need to determine what we should be asking, not what we have been asking or what has become the norm. What are the current issues? Just like with outhouse versus septic, things have changed. We're not using corn cobs and needing a lantern to get out there anymore. We need to start worrying about other aspects, and we need to modernize our subdivision regs across the board, flats, everything. This is just step one in trying to look at the whole pie. It's too much what we choke on it if we try to handle it all at one time. This is one slice. Let's make it through this slice, and then we'll look at the next problem, because I know we can go down rabbit holes with our subdivision regs, with our preliminary plat review, with our final plat review. What we're trying to do is one piece of the pie at a time. And so with this, we're looking at it as, what do we do first? Those first line of questions. Let's go over them. What are we, and I'm sorry if I'm speaking.
No.
If you're looking at section 8.8, we'd like to change it to, you know, we used to get, was it 15 or 16 copies?
16. Actually, our book says 15.
15
But,
copies.
And that's what, Mr. Abe had brought in, all 16 with all the reports, and he had told me Linda had only required like 2 or 3, but I did not see that on paper, and you know, what's on paper was
What we're supposed to
15.
get, right.
So
I see.
that's what I required, that this was my first plat approval.
So bringing
So
it
I'm trying to.
modern, like
both.
what we're trying to think about is
Modernizing it.
modernize it. Why don't we have a hard copy for one board and a hard copy for the other, and require digital forms into the office? Bring us 2 layouts, from your health and safety plan, to your footing plan, to your landscaping plan. Put it on a flash drive. One for Ms. Tracy, one for myself. We can review it, we can email it, we can send it back and forth. We can have one hard copy for the Board of Commissioners, one hard copy for the Planning and Zoning Board. Sorry.
And actually, on that amendment, we had suggested revising 15 hard copies to 3.
Because we are required to keep one on record.
Right, as a working copy. And then the hard copies, let's see, revise.
One from P and Z,
Yeah,
one from
just
VLC.
one and three total, but it was just listed out at 8.4, 3, B and C. And
Okay.
then,
But you would give us, like, it was convenient that guy gave us, not the big ones, but the little ones that were connected to our, in our packet.
yes, that was the digital copies that I had printed out
Oh.
from what he had sent me.
Oh.
Mhm.
Cause that's an expense to them, and that's a waste of time and paper
Right,
and all
and
that
most
kind of
of
stuff.
the members didn't want theirs, you know, I had to throw several away
Yeah,
per their request.
so we, like the chairman's saying, we required them to waste money for no good reason.
Right. But I wanna go back to 5. I need some more clarification on 5. What do you want?
And we have a checklist that we go by.
This is, from what I saw with Mike, let me see if I can clarify this. This is what I gathered out of it, is that if you look at 8.5, where it lists those things that the developer is supposed to produce in order to get first preliminary plat, I think what Todd is asking for, and Mike says would be a good idea, is to make sure that we don't have a list of things that they would say, well, I produced this, this, and this, and I've got everything here to you, and with the assumption that I did all this, now, you know, my preliminary plat is approved. They're wanting some things that are judgmental, so that we can approve it, or not approve it, or with conditions, or whatever, like those, the checkoff sheet that Tracy does, it's also in here. They're wanting some judgmental things entered in there to, so that these folks don't feel like I've met all these things,
Oh.
therefore I deserve my
Yes.
preliminary plat to be approved. Does that make sense? That's what I
Makes
got.
sense.
That's exactly right.
Okay, makes clear as mud.
Yeah,
I think you can swim through.
Clear as mud.
so is that something we need to push for a vote on at the next meeting?
That's something,
Is that one of them yesterday things?
Yes, sir.
but
Do you-
also.
will this
have to
text
put
be
it
the
together.
same as what we bring up for the vote? This text right here?
No. It wouldn't be, it would be, me trying to put together y'all's ideas in a new context, or, you know, addition thereof, or if anything needs to be removed as well. It goes both ways. I always make sure everybody knows that it goes both ways. If y'all would consider this, for, in the coming 2 weeks, let's say 2 weeks, as a deadline, throwing that out there. If each of you, and I hope I'm not overstepping my bounds, if each of you would give me yours, everybody give me what they would like to see in there. Let me put it together, same as everything else. Give me your ideas, let me put it together, send it back to y'all, and see what the grand escape is. I'll put together the plan for y'all if y'all feed me information.
Well, your time limit there, now, so you said 2 weeks. Now, we're
To get
meeting
in
again in
ideas.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
So do we need to get that to you, and then we address this particular one at our business meeting in May?
Or do y'all need to vote in 2 weeks?
If you need to vote in 2 weeks, then you gotta do something different. You gotta make a timeline.
So you want for just the preliminary or both of them?
You got something to add to this?
Now, just one thing to keep in mind, this process, just like somebody making a zoning request, this will require 2 public hearings. So what you'll be working on will be helping, Mike Pruitt and the chairman, whoever, assemble what we want to present to the public so y'all have a public hearing here, and then we will have, just like the rezone. So we're just trying to assemble the right, and these are just, and the chairman's been driving this, but these are stopgap measures to try to answer some issues that we hope the comprehensive plan will address more completely. So it'll be working to assemble what we want this document to be, then present to the public to see what their comment is, and then for y'all's recommendation.
Okay, well, I understand, but the only thing I'm trying to guard against is rush, and come up with something that's not worth our food.
Yeah.
You know, so, you
Do you
know,
think it's?
I mean, I'm not trying to delay stuff, but I am concerned that we need to have time to work these issues out and to come up with something good, because surely if we don't, so that bunch of idiots made a, they just did something, you know, so we need time.
Why don't we have a deadline to get this information as best we can back to you within 2 weeks? Not saying that it has to be, I mean, if we're not ready in 2 weeks, if it's still up in the air, then we can elect to push it down the road a little bit maybe. But, I mean, if we don't, I think if we don't have some end goal in mind, we'll let it go on and on. But I'm not saying that it has to be approved in 2 weeks. I'm saying,
Yeah.
if we're not ready, I mean, who knows, we may be ready on pole barns and this, but not ready on these others.
Yeah.
But with the understanding that if we're not ready, we're not ready, so.
Are you talking about, what are you talking about? I thought he was just talking about the preliminary plats and things. You talking about
Always.
everything in 2 weeks?
No.
No.
No, we're talking about, I thought we were talking about specifically 5, to have that
Yeah.
ready in 2 weeks. And then 5 says amending the preliminary plat approval criteria to allow the board more discretion.
So it's just.
That's the one I'm talking about.
Okay, just a preliminary plat.
That's what we're talking about.
All right, that's what I thought he was going.
Because not only
I
are we
thought you
gonna
said
try to
the
find something.
driveway issue and that one that we discussed, you need that
That's
done
getting it.
ASAP.
I'm getting that pushed too.
So, okay, clarify this. Are we doing just the preliminary plat in 2 weeks, or you need the driveways too?
So you need input from each of us in the interim for the, I mean, those
Both,
two things.
Two things.
The pole barns.
Hold on, Stu.
Right there.
This
Pole barns, driveways, and
Preliminary
plat.
plat.
The plat.
The pole barn, I think the biggest thing is enclosed or not, and the size. Driveways was kind of laid out.
Yeah.
In approved, we just need to make sure there's nothing that has been overlooked.
On the driveways.
And then, I would
Drive.
say if you push any thought in one direction over the other, if we have to task manage, that the preliminary plats are the
First
issue.
one.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I also think that we could probably make a decision tonight on 6 and 7. I mean, that's not a big issue, that's more of
I think those are no
an
brainers.
internal thing,
Yeah.
Housekeeping.
you know,
Housekeeping.
more than for us, so let's just make a decision tonight as to, I would say to approve these changes.
Y'all can. Yes. And say, the 5
Oh,
copies and
copy.
2 digital.
Yeah.
We can commence that.
A motion on the floor to approve,
I'll second.
5 and 6, 6 and 7, I'm sorry.
I'll second.
Okay.
Definitely, yeah.
We move to properly second that we approve, items 6 and 7 to be changed as displayed, all of us. Any discussion, any further discussion? Not, Cynthia?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
okay. 6 and 7 has been approved, and we'll work on the rest of them.
Wait, can I ask, let me ask you about, what specifically did you want on the sawmills, the size or the location?
Sawmills, we can keep in the back of our mind.
Okay, back of the mind.
Right now, grandfather and his sawmill,
Yeah, back of the mind.
back of the mind, that's something for us to work on in the coming months. The other 3, pole barn size, for consideration, throw it to me. If there's anything that may have been missed or overlooked with, the culverts up it to me, and then, or also, feel free to contact either one of us, I'm sorry. I feel, I get pushed every which way, don't
You're fine.
push it to me. The big thing is the subdivision ordinance. The preliminary plats, start getting our minds wrapped around that one, and hopefully we knock out this little pond, and get another piece, and we all become diabetics with happy guts and no feet subdivisions.
And I emailed you about this question the other day, but I was gonna ask you again. We can put the ordinance or the guidelines on kennels. You have to deal with the Hannah Creek situation.
I'm dealing with
Where are we on that?
David Jordan, who's the legal representation, for the gentleman with the kennels. They are putting together a game plan for what they would like, and he actually contacted me today, as I was trying to prep for this meeting, and I think they have done it. With the regulations, we have, found through a side source where we adopted a regulation code for GDA and the enforcement thereof. So way back when I sent you the links for GDA, and I'm happy to do that again, with the kennels and their requirements and what laws that they have to follow, we can enforce them. We can enforce everything GDA has. I would recommend that we look at adopting them as the county and putting them in ours instead of having to reference the state level that we have them. We still keep it a conditional use with the understanding that when it comes to fecal matter, runoff, we can address it situation by situation, size of the dog. How many? Is it appropriate in that area? Is it not? Should we involve shrubbery, vegetation, for each condition? We still make it conditional, but we adopt those state guidelines, and that's what I'm working on with the county clerk. We can reference them, we can work with them now. It just makes it a little smoother, for the county, and we can clarify them.
All right, anything else we need to address tonight before we adjourn?
You wanna do the comment?
One thing I would say is that be prepared at our public hearings for probably a lengthy night, because we got a lot to deal with. Do your homework, go out, look, visibly, make your decision as to what you think ought to be the best thing for this county. Not what somebody wants, but what we believe is the best direction to drive this. Not easy, but it's what we need to do. Yes, ma'am.
We did have one last agenda item, and.
Oh, we did?
Yes,
I
sir.
missed it?
It's
I'm sorry.
just comments from staff. This was added in, Christopher and I. There is one thing that in preparing the rezone applications or any of the zoning applications, one of the requirements is to include a copy of the tax map. You know, and that's the one that includes all the zoning classifications of all the surrounding properties.
Mhm.
You know, and that's done to let the board see, you know, what's going on around it. If one's up for a rezone, kind of shows the neighborhood. What has happened is, over time, the tax maps have become irrelevant because they have not been consistently updated during previous years. And by that, I mean splits have not been drawn into those, rezones have not been labeled into those, and, you know, it goes back 20 years. Not only that, is that the property valuation department is telling me there's no way to recreate a tax map. So we're working off of old tax maps in a book that cannot be recreated, and some of those parcels have been split, some have been absorbed into other parcels, some have been rezoned. And there's no way to make updates on it. So what I'm finding hard is, number one, I'm having to present to you guys and to the board a tax map that is, kinda irrelevant. I try my best to correct anything that I've seen, but there's certain, the spaces are so small and so tiny because of the condensed, that it's almost pointless to even give you guys that. So I'm just trying to think of a better way to present the same information. But, our hands are kinda tied as to what. I tried to go into Q Public and do an overlay that, would show the different parcels, but it doesn't show the zones. And it's impossible to handwrite those zones into these tiny little maps that print it out. So I'm kinda at a standstill with it.
I got a question. At the tax map, where did the zones, y'all keep the zones in the office where it's been rezoned?
We keep all of the zones since
Did y'all
'94.
get it off the tax map? How do we know that if we rezone something, other it's not, it's a different rezone?
Oh, now, we do have a classification book that is kept.
Yeah.
Each parcel is, map and parcel is listed, and if something's rezoned, we mark it on there. If things have conditions, we mark it in that book. However, these tax maps are a different story. It's just, I guess at the beginning of '94, they started labeling the zones on every one of these parcels. And now it's almost, I try to present the most accurate part of it to you guys and to them, but, and where the discrepancy is when I'm looking at the physical tax map and I'm seeing, the adjoining property owners that I need to notify of this rezone application. So I have them marked on the tax map, and then when I go to Q Public to zoom in on each parcel to get the address of all the people that I've marked that need notifications, I'm finding that parcel isn't there anymore, or it's changed, and it's just, I don't know, my hands are kinda tied with it, but I didn't realize that until this group of rezones. It really brought on lots of trouble, I don't know why, but it was in that particular section, there was a lot of changes. And it just kinda come to my attention there.
Not only is it not accurate, it's very time consuming, isn't it?
Oh, yes,
Putting that together.
it is. And I don't mind doing it at
Well,
all,
my opinion of this is to make decisions on bad information is the worst thing that you can do.
Mhm.
So until you find something better or something that is more accurate, I would suggest stop doing it. Stop putting that in there. Now, it's not up to me, but that will be my recommendation.
Just a question, why can't we regenerate a tax map?
I was told that we no longer had the mapping capabilities to do that. At the time that was drawn up, I think that we were in contracts with maybe the Northeast District, I can't
Yeah,
remember.
Or the joint regional.
Yeah, and now, and we at one time had mapping, equipment in their offices. But some reason we do not have those now, and I'm told that that is the only set and they cannot be revamped.
So how else would we know if it's, well, you said this is not really academic.
Exactly, and I try to catch the errors as I'm doing them, but it's impossible because you would have to go back through all the rezones in a book of like 17,000 parcels to see if they're correct or not.
So is this like 10% inaccurate or 20% inaccurate?
I would say probably 20 to 30% inaccurate. And then the goal of it is just to see what the
Yeah.
zones are. So it may be a list that I could just come up with. It may not be a map because I can't produce the map, or, you know, and I even tried to do it off of the Q Public map of the surrounding areas, but when you print that out, it is a dark, dark green, and you can't label it. I mean, I can use whiteout on the bigger parts and write it in, but on these tiny tracks, I can't. And the problem with that is when it should be considered two parcels, and in reality it is, but then on Q Public, they're put into one for tax purposes, so that's not even a true
Yeah.
portrait.
To me, it's like a guide, I don't know.
Well, to me,
Cause
again,
I don't know the county that well,
Mhm.
so it's like a guide.
Yeah, I mean, it shows you, you know, the roads and
I mean, you know,
pretty much
even-
accurate, but.
Even it kinda tells me, okay, well, majority of this is RR, even though 20% you say may not be that, but I don't know how everybody else feels, but to me, I don't know.
well, I just feel like inaccurate information drives your decision making a lot of times in the wrong direction.
Code enforcement's partnering with planning and zoning right now to try and resolve the issue through other means by bringing Q Public more accurate as well, so we will have a visual, if maybe not a print off. We came about it looking at non-conforming lots and areas, and it's been so far a 6-week task, and we have went through all 16,000 parcels and have found, bless you, and have found incongruencies and a great number that we are working with other departments on trying to rectify. Now, hopefully, once we have rectified all the non-conforming parcels, all the mislabeled parcels, all the wrong tax maps, all the wrong books and recordings as well, it's quite an endeavor, just so y'all know. We're hoping to use that material to produce something new and better. But it is definitely not over even a few month period. We just have skimmed the surface, and it took us 6 weeks to skim the surface.
Because I'm not saying that we do away with it forever.
Yeah.
But until we get it right, until you can provide us with the accurate information and provide the commissioners with the accurate information, I think it should just be abandoned. That's just a personal opinion, you know, I mean, we can let whatever the other members say.
How about this as a temporary measure? You're going to research on Q Public and get all of the adjoining parcel owners and their addresses to send them notices.
Yes.
What if we just limit it to the adjacent properties, since you're going to research those anyway? Can we get the zones of just those peripheral ones, and then not go out a mile or whatever it is that we're currently doing?
Right.
But at least just get those that are around it. I mean,
Yeah.
personally, when I get these, I go on Q Public and start looking at things anyway, so I'm gonna see it, but
Have you
everybody.
noticed the discrepancies?
Oh, yeah, I understand what you're saying. But for those that might not and need to know, you know, what's at least surrounding that particular parcel we're dealing with, if you're gonna research it anyway, if you could get those zones,
Yeah,
just as a temporary
absolutely.
thing.
Well, on the first page of the application, it does each one of the north, south, east, and west, you know, it has those 4 quadrants, I guess, but on it as well. And this isn't exclusive to our county as well. Q Public is just an aggregator, and it's only as good as the data that's fed into it, so it's, don't beat yourself up over that process that you're going through.
And
We're
I
gonna
found
make ours
Q
shine
Public
example.
is not accurate all the time either.
Correct, that's what it, yeah, and it's not exclusive to,
I'm dealing with that now,
yeah,
with
it
the
is.
property.
I'm not sure if we're gonna have to change something or put a pause on it.
Especially that gives you direction you need to go in.
Okay, and it may be a matter that we need to take before the board of commissioners and, you know, ask
If we
their.
change anything in the requirements or put a pause on it.
It has to be done policy somehow.
Yeah.
Any other concerns?
I think we've opened that one up. We might have something to present at the next business meeting. Maybe we put these ideas together with a proposal that then would go before a vote, that then would go to the Board of Commissioners for approval, We can't just say, no, we're not gonna do that anymore without
Understand.
doing the process. But I think tonight the conversation has given us enough forethought and enough to put together, and y'all understand the concern, and it's ruminating on top of the 85 other things I helped share. But we will have something to present at next month's business meeting to address this.
Okay.
Ms. Tracy, does that sound good?
Yes, sir.
Anything else? Your motion to adjourn.
Hey.
Move to say, all in favor, aye? Aye. Meeting is adjourned.
I'll always be the first for you on that one. If I get a vote, if I got to be to adjourn.
Are you taking this?
Ma'am.
It's a hard thing to do, and it comes up every 2 year time, there's new commissioners. Comes up with,
I mean-
the rivers actually